Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are letting everyone trickle in. Everyone's bringing their Otter pilots. So we've got the AIs in the room already. I'll do formal introductions, but I'm joined by my colleagues, Matthias, Frank, and Marion Noble. Hello, if you're watching us on a live stream. We are streaming this on YouTube and Twitter. And this is good. You know, people are jazzed up about AI, or they're busy professionals. So it remains to be seen. You know, what's the common theme here? So, all right, as people trickle out, I'm going to just do super brief introductions, and then we're just going to jump right in. Obviously, a 1 hour session is not enough for the topic that we're going to cover. But my name is Kei. I'm the CEO and founder of RadReads. We are an online education and training company. We write, we create videos, and we're all about helping ambitious professionals lead their most productive, examined, and joyful lives. Normally, our content is our trainings are in those categories, and in this case, you know, AI is a big product. AI is going to be, as we saw from the testimony in front of Congress yesterday, AI is a big thing that's going to touch so many parts of our lives that I don't think we can fully grasp it right now. Some people have called it, you know, a Google type magnitude event, or an iPhone type magnitude event, or something exponentially more. Again, I am not one to pontificate on those. Pontification aside, what we want to do today is AI is daunting. There's just a lot of stuff, and it doesn't have to be, right? And we have been using AI as a company, and we're going to talk about that, how we've been using it. But we've been using it. My 9-year-old daughter uses AI. My wife uses AI to write thank you cards. It's some of the magic of AI is that it's like having a human next to you. And so you don't need a special class to learn how to talk to a human. And so why would you need a special class to learn how to talk to AI? Anyways, the goal for today is to just get you started. We're going to show you 2 apps, ChatGPT, which I'm sure you've heard of unless you've been living under a rock, and Midjourney, which you may not have heard of, which is just super cool, is basically you put in text prompts and it creates images for you. And they're both free or very cheap, you know, 10, 15 bucks a month. I think ChatGPT is $20 a month. And so we're going to get you started from zero to just being functional on how to use these apps. Then we're going to dive into some Q&A. So Marion Noble is our product manager. She's going to be collecting all of the questions, ensuring that the show is running tightly. Matthias Frank is our marketing lead, and he is also our resident AI expert. So he teaches us how to use these things. And so I am going to pass the microphone to Matthias. Y'all are in great hands.
I'm just going to jump in real quick and just say we've got 18 people watching on Twitter and 5 people on YouTube. So hello, please drop your questions on those platforms if you're watching from there, and I'll pass them over to Matthias. Go ahead, Matthias.
Yes, awesome. Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited to be here with you today and talk about AI for the next good hour. So just so you know, before we start in, we'll first have a bit of a structured part where I guide you through things and show you how everything works, and just try to show you the 80-20 of AI. And then we have a longer Q&A section in the end. So if you have any questions during the presentation or already, drop them in and we'll get to them later. But now let me share my screen so we can dive right in. Okay, let me put that to full screen and we should be good to go. So yes, welcome to AI Essentials for Busy Professionals. Today, as Kay already mentioned, we're going to cover 3 very simple things to get you up to speed. We will first talk very quickly about the 80-20 to understand AI, right? What are the most important things that you need to know just so you, whenever you use AI, you have a good understanding of what you're actually interacting with, and it will make it a lot easier to adopt a new tool, whether that's ChatGPT, Midjourney, or something very different. And then the two different tools. And the way I want you to think about these two tools is first ChatGPT, which might become your new intern and might perform amazingly well there. And then Midjourney. It's a bit of an overstatement to say that everyone's an artist now, but it certainly empowers people like me who have like very little talent for these things to create a pretty stunning things that otherwise just wouldn't be possible. So without further ado, let's take a look at the 80-20 of AI. And there's a lot of talk right now around these AI tools, and like if you're like me, it felt like AI has been a topic like on the very back burner of like science news for the past 5 to 10 years, and it was always something that like, maybe it has at some point like an impact, but probably not on me and my work. And now like the past 6 to 12 months like radically changed that. So the thing though about that is that it's actually like a very narrow part of AI that is now all the rave, and that's LLMs, like large language models. And just quickly talking about them will again help you better use these tools and actually understand the limitations and most importantly what they can't do. So when we talk about a large language model, that's something like ChatGPT, and it means that it's a model, an AI model that has been trained on huge amounts of data, right? Like we talk like billions and trillion parts of text that have been like put into this model, and this model has simply in a very stupid way in the beginning been trained to recognize statistical patterns in words. So like you just keep throwing books at it until it understands that an English sentence is usually built in a specific way. And the more you do that and the more data you give it, the better the model gets at predicting what the next word should be. And that's very simplified all a large language model does. You give it some text, and based on all the other text this model has seen, it will tell you what the most likely next part of this text will be. That's why if you used GPT-3 before it became ChatGPT in the very beginning, the playground, you might have encountered some of these funny quirks where you ask it a very specific, very long yes or no question. And no matter how much you asked it, the answer was always yes or no, because the most likely word to come after you ask it, can you do, and then like list out 20 things is yes or no. Whereas now that it has been adjusted and fine-tuned, right? Now it knows that it's not supposed to answer with yes, it's supposed to, that it knows it's supposed to answer something differently. But that's at the very core how this large language model works. And that has some very important implications for working with AI. The first thing is that a large language model is not intelligent. It simply guesses based on statistical probabilities what an answer is supposed to be. And it takes these guessworks based on all the material that it has been fed, which means that, for example, if like everyone were to assume that like something is wrong, right, and that was the most like a prominent piece of data that it was trained on, then it will give you wrong answers. And there's no way right now for the language model to ever verify what it has been taught. That's the first thing. The second thing is that while it has been trained on billions of data points, it doesn't remember them. Like there's no huge database in the background of ChatGPT, like there's with Google, right? If you put a question into Google, Google searches its databases, and that's the actual data of the web, and will show you the actual responses. ChatGPT doesn't know what it has been trained on. It simply guesses based on the statistical things what comes next, which means it has forgotten a large part of the information that has been fed. And that leads to something that you might encounter quite often when you work with AI, which is called hallucination, where the model tells you something with utmost confidence that this is the case, but it's completely wrong, right? The model has no way to actually verify it. It can't like guess an answer, then double check it, and then give you a response. It will simply answer based on its training data. And the two last things that are then important from this, and then we can move on to the actual work, is that first, it also has like a certain selection bias, right? Depending on what information it has been fed and what someone, a human, has selected to be relevant to be fed into ChatGPT, that changes the way it will answer certain questions, right? So if there is a certain selection bias in certain texts or topics that are used more often in that context, it's more likely that it will produce answers in that direction. You see that, for example, in a different way with smart vehicles, right? You might have heard that a lot of the AI software that is used in cars to recognize passerbys and like avoid crashes works worse with women and works like much worse with people of color, because most of the training data were white men in terms of the images. So again, that's like one of the limitations that comes from this model working on what it's been trained on. And last but not least, and that's something you will encounter all the time when you work with AI, this prediction means that AI can seem very smart in the 1 second and ultra dumb the next one, because seemingly like questions that seemingly to us may mean the same might be very differently interpreted by the AI, simply, again, just because it guesses what is the most likely answer based on your inputs. So that much about large language models. Last thing here, they are actually different from like these text-to-image tools. So Midjourney, that's another tool. That's a text-to-image tool. They work slightly different, but there it's not as important to know how to behave. For large language models, it is really important because, again, a lot of times it will feel like you're using Google, or it will feel like you're having a conversation with a human, but that's not the case. It is not smart. It has no intelligence whatsoever. It just guesses based on the training data. Okay, so with that being said, let's dive into ChatGPT and take a closer look at the first tool. So, as Key already said, unless you lived under a rock for the past few months, you probably heard of ChatGPT. It's one of the most prominent applications. It is the fastest growing tool ever. I think it's like no other tool has ever acquired that many users in such a short time. And it is one of these large language models, which means it behaves like a human. You can chat, right, and you get a response back. And if you've never used ChatGPT, it's actually super simple. You just need to navigate to chat.openai.com, and then you can sign up. And while there is a paid version, you can use it for free. The free account has certain drawbacks, right? Like sometimes you get rate limited, sometimes it's too busy. So in particular, if you work during the peak US work hours, it might be down for you. So signing up to like a paid account is worth for that. But apart from that, you have access to like 80% of the features. So if you're just starting out, it's completely enough to go on the free plan and start playing around with that. Now, once you open ChatGPT, the way I would like you to think about ChatGPT is treat it as if you just got a new intern today who is super smart, super capable, but has no idea what you, your company, your business is about. Which means, like just with any hire, the 3 key things to making this relationship work is to explain things well, to show what you expect, and to iterate, meaning giving it feedback, or in this case, having feedback for yourself, how you need to change your behavior with it. And we're going to look at all of these 3 in a bit more detail. And then later, when we jump into the demo and actually work with ChatGPT, we'll come back to it again. The first thing is explain. When you open ChatGPT, because it has like this chat-like interface, and because you've probably seen all these like best 50 prompts to ask ChatGPT, you might be tempted to just like either copy a prompt or like write it something and ask it something generic. But just like if you ask your intern a very generic thing or like tell him something very generic, the chances that the intern who has no idea about your business will get it right are very low. So generic prompts mean, so what you want to do is when you have a task and you want it to do something, like listing out the things that you expect from it in as much detail as, again, you would do with someone who has never worked with you, who has no idea what your assumptions are. That's the key to success. And that can sometimes mean that you write really, really long prompts. When I work with ChatGPT, a lot of times when I wanted to spit out, like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 sentence long thing, the prompt, so my command to it is actually half a page long. So much longer than would take to actually write the thing. But again, once you have one prompt, right, you can alternate it and reuse it. But key for the whole process is to explaining very well what you expect it to do. One trick that you can add to your repertoire is the second part, and that's showing it what you actually expect it to do. So just like you would with an intern, like giving it like a sample of how like a good job looks like makes it a lot more likely that it will actually perform the task well. So again, if you ask your intern to draft a memo in a certain style and you want like at the very top, the key takeaways bolded and in bullet points, and then you want like the members of the meeting listed, and then you want like X, Y, Z, just the same as you would tell him, like this is the formatting, you should tell ChatGPT, this is exactly what you expect. And last but not least, iterate. Chances are on the first try, things go wrong, right? Your intern might have misunderstood something. You might have missed something and like didn't realize that something wasn't clear in your instructions. So looking after every task at what the output was and what your input was, and like figuring out, okay, this is where I went wrong, or this is where, you know, our communication between me and ChatGPT went wrong, is really, really key. The chances that you get things right on the first try are fairly slim. Again, if you just play around with it and just want to have fun and create fan fiction for Harry Potter, go ahead. But if you wanted to like reliably help you do work for you, you really need to invest some amount of work to figure out, okay, if I do this, then I get this result. And if I want to have a different result, then I need to change some of my inputs. So these are the 3 key things that you should remember when working with ChatGPT. And again, it really helps thinking of it as the latest hire for your company. Super smart, super capable, but you really need to hold its hand and walk it through exactly what you expect it to do. Now it's time to look at some use cases and to jump into the actual demo. So for use cases, there are a ton, but in particular, when it comes to your job and like helping you perform there better, or like take tasks and perform them for you, it's really these 3 C's that you want to look at. The first thing is comprehension, the second is creation, and the last thing is coaching. And they are all fairly easy to understand. And we're going to jump now into ChatGPT to actually look at how that works. So for the first part, comprehension, we're talking about the key ability of ChatGPT or any large language model, and that is to process language. So you might remember in school or when you were learning a language, one of the categories that you always get tested on is your ability to understand the written text and then answer specific questions based on that text. And ChatGPT will widely outperform you on that. So if you need to process any sort of information, that could be something that you have to, I don't know, read certain articles and then have a memo on that, or that you get customer feedback and want to just like quickly get a, you know, like a summary of what the customer is saying, or any of these sort of things, again, where you input some data and you have to read through it, but you actually just need the gist of it. ChatGPT will do an amazing job at helping you achieve that. And we're actually going to take this example of having customer reviews and now wanting to work with them and processing them as an example to look at how this prompting works, and also like how the 3 steps that we were talking about before, right? Showing it what you expect, explaining in detail, and then iterating works live. So for that, I actually generated some fake reviews using ChatGPT for the RadReads merch line that doesn't exist. But if it would, we probably would get amazing raving reviews. And as a customer success person, for example, I might want to like process these reviews and just quickly know, okay, what are the key inputs? So if I open up ChatGPT for the first time, I might be tempted to simply say, well, please ChatGPT, summarize this product review, right? And then I would just paste in the product review. And I have like this nice one about, oops, that's a few too many. I just want a short one. This RadRead mug is my productivity secret weapon. So just a very simple, very like easy prompt, right? Like, hey, intern, this is like a review, please summarize it. And if I now hit enter, you see that the summary is basically longer than the input. So that was not helpful. And that's exactly what I talk about, right? If you put in a generic prompt, like it has no idea what it's supposed to do. If you had given it like probably like a half page or page long article, it would have somewhat summarized it. But here with something that's already quite short, it simply spits out, okay, in a longer version, what they talk. So that's not helpful. Again, next step would be to look at your prompt and think, okay, how can I be more specific? What is it that I expect from it? And you have a few ways that you could go here, right? So you could go ahead and just say, well, I add now some details, right? Like summarize it in maybe 1 sentence. And you can try that, and we can actually do this. But with the 1 sentence thing, it's important to understand that, again, an LLM is not intelligent. It actually doesn't understand the concept of 1 sentence. So even if you specify 1 sentence, 280 characters or so, it usually gets it close, but it doesn't get it exactly right. So if we just put in the same thing, again, summarize this product review in 1 sentence, it should do 1 or 2 sentences next. But again, you see it's a fairly long sentence. So we are getting closer to it, but it's still not the result that we want. So another thing that you can do, which is super, super effective, is something that's called few shot examples, where you actually tell it, okay, this is the response that I expect. So what you could do is you could say, summarize this, this product review, and then below your initial instructions, you can add like how it's supposed to output it. For one thing that you could do, right, as a customer success person, is you maybe just care whether the review was positive or negative, right? So you could write something like this, write answer with only one word, answer either positive if the reviewer liked the product, or negative if they didn't. Now, if that works, it hopefully should actually just give us one word, positive, right? Because you explained it exactly what it is that you expect from it. Now, that might sound like now nice and like, okay, so now I can paste them in, but I could have, that time that it took me, right, to create like this prompt, I could have just read the whole thing. But the true power comes now from scale, because probably you don't have to just read one review, right? You might have to read a lot. So what you can do now is you can take your prompt, you can put it in there again, and you can say it, summarize these product reviews. And then we can say answer for each product review with only one word. And now instead of having my one thing in here, I can take my long list of like 10 or 13 product reviews, right? And ideally, I just get a quick summary of how their customers felt about it. So that's already like can save me, right, a lot of time if I just have to go through and like just see like, hey, they loved our latest product rollout. Now you could refine this approach and you could say something like, please summarize this product review with key insights for the sales team, right? Focus on all information like price, X, Y, Z that would be relevant to the sales team. Limit your response to 3 factors, like put them out all in one word, right? And then you would get like a list of like 3 words, and would, if there's something, or if it has no relevance to the team, you would instruct it to say no relevance. And then you could quickly see, okay, if now I need to like tell my sales team how are the customers responding to this, you would have a very quick list. Or if you want to get one step further and actually start processing data, ChatGPT is also really, really good at giving you structured data. Now, that is like amazing if you have to like work with code and actually like write code, right, that passes the answer. But even if you don't, this can be super helpful, for example, if you need to paste it in a spreadsheet, right? I could ask ChatGPT, for example, I could take my initial thing here with all the different requests, and I could ask it to output this as a CSV, right? So I could go in here and then I can adapt my prompt again. And I can say, so answer for each, instead of this, I want now answer with a CSV formatted list. Please provide the number, the review, plus one word analysis of whether the review was positive or not. Now, this prompt might not work at the first go, because like if you again like want a very specific output like a CSV, you might actually have to show it a CSV or like remind it what to do exactly. But we can just run it and we can see, okay, so we got a CSV sort of, but this time with only the number and the sentiment. So we could like tell it, no, I want a CSV with 3 columns, 1 for the number, 1 for the full review, and 1 for the sentiment. And then we can see whether it gets it right this time. And sometimes you need to do it a few times, but here you can see now you actually get like this fully formatted CSV that you could paste or save like this in your documents, import into Excel, and could actually pass that, right? And that's, again, super, super useful because it allows you to process huge amounts of data that you would otherwise need to carefully read and really speed up your workflow. And again, you also see how this prompt process works, right? Like the initial one, that is not helpful at all, just asking it to review it. But then thinking through your own process and thinking what is it that you actually expect really, really helps to refine the results. Bonus points, if you've been following RadReads recommendations of writing SOPs, then you should actually have like these sort of step-by-step instructions that really tell exactly how you should like take an input, process it, and what the expected output looks like, right? And just how you would give your employees very, very specific instructions of how something should be done. That's the same way with ChatGPT, just that ChatGPT is even more brutal, right? There are no assumptions. It has no ideas of how you function. It can't read your face. It can't read your sentiment. You really need to be very, very specific about what it is that you expect it to do. So that was the first of our C's. That was comprehension. Now, the second C for creation means that you use ChatGPT to, well, create something. And here, ChatGPT can be both very, very good and very, very bad. And really comes down to what it is that you actually want to produce. So here, again, you want to really think about that like intern that is in your office that really doesn't know a lot about your thing. So if you can tell it exactly what it is that it should produce, it's probably quite good. So things that ChatGPT is quite good at is brainstorming, right? If you just need a list of things, it's quite good. Or if you have a very specific template that it's supposed to follow, it is quite good. But again, it needs instructions. So let's say, for example, we want to use ChatGPT to help us create some marketing campaign for our RadReads mugs. So I would ask ChatGPT, please brainstorm a list of 25 slogans for our merch. And then I should give it a bit more information, right? Our merch is RadReads coffee mug that makes you more productive. Great. And for the brainstorm, a lot of times, or sometimes it really varies the quality of the results that you get here, right? Sometimes it has like some really good things. Sometimes it's very generic and horrible. So again, here you might just want to repeat the same prompt, right? You could just say like, okay, give me another 25. You could start specifying things that you want and that you don't want, right? So if I wanted to be more cringe or like more dad humor, right? Like give me 10 with dad jokes. You could lean into these style directions and probably use it less as something where you like take something right away and say, okay, this is what I'm going to actually have, and more as this conversation with your intern, right? You tell him that today I need to come up with some slogans, and then you just bounce a few ideas back and forth, and then you take one of these ideas and actually expand on it. But most of the time, again, you wouldn't just take something and copy it. But it can be quite nice, right, to get you over the hump and just help you brainstorm something. Now, if you wanted to refine
Matthias, can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
This features of inputting 10 reviews from quote unquote memory. Is this only available in the pro version?
What do you mean with from memory?
I think maybe he's talking about the text expander.
The text
which
expander.
is a
Yes,
different app, right?
Tool. Yes, that's not ChatGPT. That's Alfred. Alfred is amazing, but like a lot of apps have this functionality. If you're on a Mac, you should definitely get a text expander. I think we have also a RadReads article on that. It's absolutely life-changing. I don't know why they don't ship it with it, but basically, yeah, it's a clipboard history. So instead of having to copy paste things at a time, I have my complete clipboard history, always just the keyboard shortcut away. But it has nothing to do with ChatGPT. And I forgot to mention this. I'm on the Pro plan, so my answers come faster. But the module that I use, the 3.5, that's the same module that you get on the free plan. So you just have to wait a bit longer for your answers, but you can do these exact things for free right now without any paying, like any fees.
Thanks, Matthias. Carry on.
Okay, back to our RadReads mugs. So again, it was a fairly generic prompt and we get fairly generic responses, right? It's great if you want some jokes or some like generic funny things, but if you have like a specific way of writing things, you probably should give it some examples, right? So one way would be to like just have a swipe file of existing copy that you use and like paste it in and say, well, this is the style that we usually write it in. Please, based on this, come up with X. Or if you are one step further in your process, you can tell it to follow a certain method, right? Like ChatGPT has been trained on a lot of methods. So if you have like a very famous marketing method or something like that, it probably knows it. So you just can reference it by name. If it doesn't know it, then you would need to explain it step by step, right? So as an example, what we could take is the problem agitate solution framework in marketing that is used to write copy, right? Where you first start with the problem, then you write out why this problem is so bad. And then last but not least, you bridge it to the solution that you offer. And if ChatGPT wouldn't know that, then this is exactly what you would need to write in your prompt, right? Please take this product for this customer and then do A, B, C. First, describe the problem, then agitate it, then solve it. But because it knows the method, it's enough to just reference it. And this is how it could look like, right? So we could say, please please write the copy for a sales page for our RadReads mug. Use the problem, agitate, solve framework. Now, this is a fairly generic prompt, so we won't get the best results, right? If you would use this in your actual job, you should add additional things. You should add like, what are the problems that you're solving, right? What problems are your customers facing? How should it be agitated? How is your solution actually working, right? ChatGPT will not think for you. It will execute for you. So instead of you having to come up with 10 versions, right? Like you can have it do that. And you could, of course, use it to help you brainstorm potential problems and potential solutions. But ultimately, it's you who has to decide what are the parameters, because like this, it will probably just pick something generic, but we can just see how it goes to see that it will actually follow this method and give us something that follows the problem, agitate, and solve framework. And you see, this is now really long. I didn't specify at all how long it's supposed to be. Sometimes if you put this prompt in, it will give you something that's like 3 sentences long. Sometimes it's half a page. Again, I wasn't specific. Your intern doesn't know what you expect from him. So you can't expect your intern to give you a replicable result every single time. But if you just look at it, we see, okay, so we are tired of our mornings to picture something up. And then we have the problems. And then in the end, we say like, well, don't let another morning slip away, order your RadReads mug today. So it was okay, but it wasn't great. Again, so we would need to go in and like, based on our iterate part of the prompt process, would need to see, okay, what did we do wrong? What could we do better next time? Last but not least, the last C, coaching, right? This is where you would take work that you've done and you use ChatGPT to ask you to help fix things. So one example would be that if this was actually written by us and not by our RadReads intern, we could take this and ask it to critique what we've done. So one way to do this is to just fairly generically, like say, like, give me feedback, but we know already this won't work very well. So we want to put it in and we want to think about, okay, what feedback would be helpful to us? And again, that will really depend on your personal situation. You might be bad with grammar, so you might ask it to please fix my grammar. You might have a certain style of writing, but you know that your audience resonate, or like the people that your stakeholders that you write for, they want a different style, right? Maybe you write too casual for them and your manager keeps telling you, well, please use more formal language. That would be one thing. Or you could just ask, like the Scribe, certain stakeholders and ask it to like read this from their eyes, what is missing, right? So what we could do, for example, please be my writing coach, review my copy for a sales page below. Then we put it in. And usually it's a good practice to put your input around quotation marks or something that indicates that, well, this is actually not the prompt. This is what you should look at. And then afterwards, again, like tell it specifically, okay, what is it supposed to do? So in this case, I'm going to use a technique that is about like outlining exactly the steps. So I will ask it, please proceed in these steps. First, read through the sales copy from the eye of a customer. Is it compelling? What would you change? And then second, I'm going to ask it to do the same thing, but this time instead of from the perspective of a customer, I wanted to take the from the eye of expert copywriter. And again, like you could play around with this, right? You could like be more specific about your stakeholders. You could like say, okay, I'm writing this for my boss who's super busy with only 5 minutes, who likes A, B, C, and D. Please, from his perspective, check this, whether this makes sense. And then you will see that it goes through it and like actually does that job for you. And now again, depending on your inputs, you might find these helpful, you might find them not helpful, but it's a great starting point to work with, and one way of you can use the coaching. Another way to use the coaching feature would be to ask it to rewrite things, right? So if you have shorter paragraphs, you might ask it to rewrite it in certain styles of certain authors, or like something like with a different tone, right? More friendly, more neutral, simpler language, very complicated, and so on and so on. And this shows like this power of like these 3 steps, what like a large language model is capable of. It's capable of understanding text and extracting information. That's the comprehension part. It's able to come up with things within limits. It's not the best at creation actually, but it can do that. And where it's again a lot more powerful, coaching if you give it very specific instructions as to what you expect.
Hey, Matthias.
Yeah.
Can I jump in with another question?
Yes.
Nick asks, if the tool isn't good at thinking and not great at context, does it make sense that removing more human terms like read from prompts would help to make the output better?
Actually, no, because again, it's not smart itself, right? It has been trained on a lot of data, so it has a grasp of what read means. But if you speak to it in terms that are rarely used on the internet, right? If you would use some sort of very abstract language that in theory for a data science scientist, for example, makes sense, but wouldn't make sense to anyone usually conversing, then that might negatively impact it. You can play around with that. There are certainly like very interesting things, and like the new plugins for ChatGPT that are currently rolling out enable things like, for example, data science or like data analysis on a whole nother level. But in general, you should talk to it like you would talk to your intern. So I would recommend like to talk in very detailed, very specific things and exactly outlining stuff. If you ask it sometimes for emotions or for ratings, it will sometimes, not always, tell you that it's a large language model not capable of that. But if you tweak your prompt slightly, you usually get around it and actually get opinions, right? So you could also ask it to pick out of these 50 or like 25 jokes that we have up here, the favorite. And at the first go, it probably says, I can't do that, I'm a language model. And then you just repeat the prompt and say, pretend that you are X, now do it. And that usually gets you around. But yeah, I would use these terms and not avoid them.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. So much about ChatGPT. Let's quickly have a look at Midjourney and then go to the full Q&A session so that we can cover everything. But for Midjourney, right, let's go one further. Midjourney is not a large language model. It's one of these text-to-image generators that work on the backend a bit differently. But for all that we care about, we can pretend that they are fairly similar. It has been trained on a huge amount of images and has learned the sort of descriptive words for that. So when you give it some words based on, again, its unique training set, which will very much influence the output of the images, it will generate something for you. And a funny thing here is that if you look at some of the alternatives to Midjourney, there are a lot of these tools out there. And some of them, for example, have been just trained on copyrighted Shutterstock images. So no matter what prompt you will input, it will always give you this huge Shutterstock watermark over it because that was the input. So the model thinks this is how every image looks like, right? So if you were to train your own model and you would put a red water bottle into every single image that you upload, it would assume that every image always needs to have this bottle. So again, just something to keep in mind, right? If you get weird results, if some things just don't seem to happen, it might be because something is wrong or like there's some sort of bias with the training data. Now, Midjourney is one of the most capable and most accessible tools out there. It has really amazing, amazing results for like very little and amateurish prompts. So it's a great tool to start out. And just like ChatGPT, you have sometimes a free plan. I think like right now they have it closed again. So you need to actually pay for it, but they keep opening it up depending on the demand. Now, the way you use it is a bit different and not the most intuitive in the beginning. You need to go to the Midjourney page, you need to sign up, and then you actually need to join the Midjourney Discord. The only way to use Midjourney is through Discord. If you used it before, that's great. If not, it's a slightly more gamer, faster version of Slack, so it can be a bit confusing in the beginning, but you can actually create your own server and add Midjourney to that, so you don't have to deal with everyone else. Again, it's a great tool, and we're going to look at it now and see how it actually works in practice. Now, if you join the Midjourney Discord, this is what you see. And again, don't get overwhelmed if you never use Discord. It can be a lot, but the very basic thing is that you have in the middle, always like in Slack, the actual conversation. There's no threaded conversation. Everything happens on the same screen. And then on the left, you have different channels. And in the Midjourney channel, you have like these newbies room. And the way you actually operate it is you would go into one of these channels, and then you see all the hundreds of responses of other people all around the world. So you can just like also watch this and see what other people generate. It's a great way, right, to see, okay, if you put in this prompt, this is what is the result, right? Or like if you look for something like this, you get this weird fish. And like it just keeps going, right? Like people continuously posting that and there are continuous responses. Now, the much better way to use Midjourney is to go in and add it to your own server. So you can just like click on the plus icon there at the bottom. You can create your own server. It's free. And then once you've done this, you can just click on the Midjourney bot and you can say add to server. And that way you can invite Midjourney to your own personal server, like we've done for the RadReads Discord, and then you can organize it yourself, right? So one very good thing is if you actually plan to use this a bit more often is to create separate channels for separate prompts that you have so that you can organize your thinking a little bit. And then if you're in your own Discord, as you can see, things are a lot calmer and you don't have to deal with hundreds of people, and you can actually start to think, what is it that you want to see? Now, you use Midjourney pretty similar to ChatGPT. You describe something and it will give you an output. And in the beginning, you might have seen that people have these huge comma-separated lists with like hundreds of adjectives thrown one after one another, which had nothing to do with like an actual description. But the Midjourney modules have changed quite a bit. And now it is pretty much the same as with ChatGPT. You describe something in natural language. Still, like the more details you add, the better, but you don't need to have these weird sentences, and you can actually say a picture of something standing on something in the style of XYZ. Now, the way you do this is simply type / and then imagine, and this will open up the prompt option for your Midjourney. And then you type in whatever it is that you want. And as a rule of thumb, with Midjourney, what you want to always hit is the type of output that you're looking for. So are you looking for a photo, an illustration, a painting, and so on, right? So the very rough first category, then the subject, like so a photo of, and then the last thing in the style of, right? Like some sort of style instructions, if it's supposed to have something different, some sort of colors, and then you can just add details, right? But often it's very good to start with a simple prompt and then build on top of it, because the way Midjourney treats all these different variables can be quite confusing. And if you start with a very long prompt, it's very hard to then change like 1 or 2 things to get to your desired result. So I would recommend to start with something very simple and then build on top of it to try to push it in direction. So just as an example, right, we could do something, imagine a man standing on a mountain. Let me move actually these things out of the way. A man standing on a mountain holding, what should he hold? Holding a teddy bear in the style of Monet. And so we would in the beginning add them because we want actually a painting. So an impressionist painting of a man standing on a mountain in the style of Monet. And then you just press enter and then you wait for it to run. And what Midjourney will always do, it will take some moments to render the image, and then it will give you 4 variations back for your prompt. And you already see there, the fact that it gives you 4 different interpretations of your prompt means it's very, very hard to get something very, very specific. So if you're looking for like an ultra specific result, chances are you will get a bit frustrated with Midjourney because it's really hard to translate it into words. But if you have more like a rough idea, right, more like an emotion, something that you want to convey, or like some sort of funny illustration, but there's a bit of leeway of what you want, what you would accept as an output, then it can be a really great tool. It renders and then takes some time. But what you would do the next, right, is if you are happy with what works, and you can just upscale it and use it. And otherwise, you would then start building on it. So you could, for example, change the word order, right? Just the fact that we have impressionist in the beginning will put a fairly high amount of weight on impressionist. If you put that to the end, right, like the whole composition would shift and you would probably get a different result. Let's wait another second. There it is. This is our man standing on top of a mountain holding a teddy bear. So not bad, right? Like that's the first interpretation. And then we could now upscale each of these ones. But for example, if you say like, well, I actually, wanted like some different scenery, I want something changed, you would now start adding to the prompt. So you could say, well, actually the impressionist painting, that's not something that I like that much. This is not what I want to go for. I want something with a lot more color. You could say, okay, imagine, and then you can paste it in and you can say, instead of an impressionist painting, we can say like a pop movement painting of men standing on a mountain holding a teddy bear in the style, or we can leave off the style, right? Or we can mix styles, but we can leave it, or we can say like in the style of Warhol to make it like really, really clear what we mean with that. But yeah, and then you could add more details, right? So for example, if you use this to try to create a logo for something, you should add things like on a white background, right? To make sure that you can actually remove a background and use this. Or you could add like vector style to make things flat. So with Midjourney, with AI tools in general, and with Midjourney in particular, a lot of things come down to language, and knowing how to describe things will be a superpower. So if you want to work on one thing that will universally improve the way you use AI tools, it will be your ability to express yourself. That's definitely a true 10K skill. One last thing, and then we jump to Q&A, and that's you see at the very end of this, it gives this _VV5, and like these double dashes are so-called parameters, and that's how you tell Midjourney what exactly it is that you expect. So V5 means we use the latest version, but you could, for example, in that define the aspect ratio, right? So if I would do a --V and then like 16:9, instead of like giving me these squares, it would give me like a 16:9 format. And there are like a lot of other things. So if you want to dive deeper into it, you can start looking at these parameters. Just want to throw it out there that exists. And now we see our teddy bear in the pop culture style. And you see it sometimes is a bit random. Here it doesn't have a teddy bear at all. The teddy is here. This one is a full teddy bear. So again, it can get quite random, but if you just repeat the same prompt also, you will get a different result, right? So it's a lot of trial and error, and the same as with ChatGPT is true here. Treat it like an intern, improve your explanation, try to figure out, okay, where was my feedback, or what is my feedback from this experiment? Where did I go wrong?
Hey, Matthias.
Yes.
Michelle asked, can you give them images, photos as inspiration or to use in the image? Maybe you can show them the describe function.
Yes, so there are two things that you can do. You can use something that is called, like if you type / you see all the available commands, and there are a few more. So one of them is the Scribe. With this one, you can input any image and would give you a description, right? So I think I have still like our promotional picture of K somewhere here. Yep. So if we wanted it to describe K standing on the street with his surfboard, we could do it like this and then just input that, and will spit us out a prompt. Now, one word of warning, it will give you 4 like potential prompts. They will vary widely, and you will wonder, okay, like how am I supposed to pick the actual one? With a person, that's fine. But I would doubt that K is an older man, right? That is maybe not the right prompt. Smilecore is an interesting word that I didn't really know about before, right? So you will candid celebrity shots, maybe ocean academia, right? So you will see a lot of ideas, but you should treat this not as something like okay, this will give me this image, right? If I just take this, we can just for fun, right, see what comes up if we do that. It will be probably different. So it's more like a use this to learn more words and to figure out, okay, what is it that I might add to my prompt to get a certain result. The other thing that you can do is once an image is uploaded anywhere, and the easiest way to do that is to just upload, like drag it into the Discord chat, hit enter, and it uploads it to Discord, and then get the link from that. You can add image, these URLs to your prompt, and that is in part of the prompt, right? So you could have something like imagine, and then put in the URL. I think I have it from before somewhere. And then like add your prompt below, right? So painting in the style of Monet, and that would combine the image of K with the prompt in the style of Monet. But this is fairly hard to do well, as you will see from the output in a moment, because there's different weighing going on in the back end from Midjourney. So if you, for example, you have a specific object in the image, and you want to take that object and do something different with it, that's really, really hard. That probably won't work with that method. But again, you can play around with it, and it can be quite fun to see what the output is. You can also use that to mix 2 images, or like to add like 10 images and then like a specific prompt. But as you can see, our man wearing shorts standing on the side of a street with a surfboard. I mean, it does the prompt, but as you can see, that has nothing to do with, like, none of these are a photo reel, right? So it's like a very, very different style. And yeah, that's the describe function. You can use it, but it's not the most reliable one. Any other questions for Q&A while we wait for Impressionist K to render? One thing, just if we wait for the question. Like,
I was just going to say, did you explain the U's and the V's?
No, I didn't. So
could
what you see,
you explain that?
Here, yeah, these are whenever you get these images back, you have 2 options. You can either upscale them. That means it gives it to you in like full quality, right? Because here you see like it's 4 together. So if I open this in browser, it's like an image of 4 things together. So if you want just one, you would click on upscale, and that gives you one upscale. So right, we could look at this one. Okay, this is our impressionist cape, which is a very weird combination. That sometimes, like, it definitely knows Monet's garden here, right? But that's about it. But if we wanted to upscale one of these, I would click on U1 and it would give me that in big. V means variation. So if you say, well, this one here is cool, but I would like to see different versions of it, you can click on the V and it will create you 4 new images that are like plays on this one. So it can be quite nice if you like want a different pose of a character, or like you like the vibe, but you want like some different color distribution. And last but not least, you do this to just re-roll your prompt, right? So if I say like, this sucked, but I think my prompt was good, I can just re-roll it and I get a new set of 4 suggestions. Any other questions, Marian?
I got a question. Hey, Marian, are there questions? I don't want to jump the queue.
No, please go ahead, Kay.
So if you're like a senior in college, and you're like thinking about jobs and this is out, but this isn't being taught in any courses yet. Like what would you, like, how would you get smarter on this skill? Like, what were some of the what series of actions would you do to get clearer on, or like to be better at this?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is to start with it, right? Like with any skill, like if you only like the only way to actually get better at it is like doing it. So I would create a ChatGPT account, I would create a free Midjourney account, and I would just start playing around with these tools. Because you will realize that like sometimes it's very frustrating what happens, and like you butt your head against the wall. Right? For example, this clearly did not work. Like we did not get painting in the style of Monet of K with this, right? That was the wrong approach. So just doing it will be the best starting step. And then the second one would be right now to probably look for these communities that have sprung up where people share a lot, right? So Twitter is an amazing place, for example. If you just like start following like a few people in that space, right? Like things are very crowded with the creators that just like keep iterating the same like 50 crazy news that happened in AI today. But like if you cut a bit through the noise, you'll find the ones that actually share helpful prompts. And once you indicate to the Twitter algorithm that you're interested in this, right, it will resurface a lot more of these things. So I think that's the best way right now, because until it's taught, right, like the only way is to explore it yourself and see how you can use it. And then just like think about it from a playful experimentation way, right? Like no one knows right now what these tools really do and how you can really use them. And I bet with you that we have no idea how they will actually be used in 5 years. So just playing around with it and like turning it into like more of an ATLIC activity, right? Like not thinking about, okay, I will use this now because this will save me half an hour tomorrow, because it probably won't. You will probably use in the beginning a lot more time to work with the tool than it actually saves you. But that like builds the muscle and builds the skill and will help you then just like figure out like, well, I could actually use this for X, Y, Z later down the road.
Thanks for that. I would add that I don't default to thinking about using ChatGPT, but I basically keep it open on my iPad, and anytime I need to do something that involves more than 3 minutes of writing, I ask myself, how could I use ChatGPT to make this thing better or faster? And just I think like there's so Steve had asked about the use case. There's so many, because it's so free form. There's so many vectors of use cases that it would be hard to even just list all the use cases because they're so dependent on your industry, your title, your job function, and so on. And so, but the beauty of a chat-based interface is that you can just talk to it, right? And you can start to see like, oh, it really doesn't work well on this type of question, but it works really well. I have it rewrite sentences for me all the time. I'm saying, oh, can you rewrite this sentence 10 different ways for me? And then I'll pick the one that I like when I get stuck.
I'd love to jump in here too. One of my favorite use cases, for busy professionals is like, I don't have time to read long articles. So I will often, if I see an online article that I want to like learn from, I will literally copy and paste the text into ChatGPT and be like, can you summarize this in one paragraph? Like I'll do it section by section. And then that way I can, basically save it's like 2xing reading, it feels like, without like doing audio.
Yeah, and one more thing, like if you're struggling to see like where you could apply it, what I would do is if you want to try it out, like just take an empty piece of paper, write down all the things that you do for work in a day, and try to be like as granular as possible, right? Like not like I promote like figure out a new strategy, like what are the actual steps that you do to do these things, and then just like separate them into these 3 categories that I shared, right? Into the comprehension, the creation, and like the coaching part. And then just start playing around with that, because like you work with text in your day-to-day life. And if you work with text in your day-to-day life, you can use ChatGPT to do something for you or to help you with something.
Yeah. Steve says, I'm going to ask ChatGPT about the use cases we can use it for. That actually works. I've done that before. Yeah. When Matthias trained us a while back on how to use all of this, my take was I also opened ChatGPT, and just every single task I went through over the next couple of days, I would ask myself, could I use ChatGPT for this? And I was surprised that actually I could on a lot of tasks that I was just doing it, writing emails, replying to customer service stuff, like there's a lot of little things, reading and writing related, especially.
And if you can't use it, your kids probably can. Like I just like with my youngest sister, she's still in school. ChatGPT is an amazing teacher because you can ask it to explain a certain topic. In particular, it's like things that are in school, like it's probably right. You might want to like double check the fact that it gets it actually right, but it's like reliable enough. Like the textbooks are also sometimes wrong in some certain like things, right? So like it will be good enough, and you can like specify how it's supposed to teach you, right? You can ask it to like quiz me on this. You can ask it to use the Socrates method to like do like a question and like answer debate, these sort of things. You can like explain it like in 5. You can tell it to give you practice sets. It speaks multiple languages. You can translate, right? Like if English is not your first language, just like ask it to explain something in French to you. It will do all these things. So your kids probably like figure out like a way to use this fairly quickly.
Thank you so much, Matthias. Kay, can you wrap us up today?
Yes, thank you all. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you, Marian. Thank you all 50 or so of you who joined. Those who joining us on Twitter and on YouTube. This is a little bit outside of the mix of what we normally do, but this is it's hard to. It's easy to see how this can transform the way work is going to happen over the next 5 years. Even you spend a couple hours with it, you're like, oh my God, it might not be exact, it might be weird, it might not be exactly the right answer, but remember too, this is like the V1 of it, right? This is like the what was it? The iPod, right? This is the iPod, and now we've got, iPhone 14 Maxes that can, do 4K video on them. So just remember that the human interaction part is really quite magnificent. And really, it is the way we learn, and it's the way we do things. And it's going to lead to a lot of very, very big societal questions of like, what do term papers look like? What does what's the future of writing? What does admin work look like? What does customization work look like? What does customer service look like? The list is on and on and on. I know people don't fully even grasp the second and third and fourth order consequences of this once things get even more advanced. So I encourage you all, again, even if you're like, no, I own a gym, this doesn't apply to me. I bet that even if something that seems completely unrelated to this, like owning a gym, like ask it to come up with 20 different workouts for someone in their 40s trying to lose 10 pounds who's got a weak back. You probably would be surprised at what it will give you. So with that, thank you all. Have an incredible day. Thank you so much to the RadReads team, Matthias in particular, for leading this great session. And we'll see you all soon.